Hi, and welcome to another appetizing episode from Gut Smokehouse Barbecue. Today, we are not going to be smoking. We're actually going to be making an authentic lobster bisque from scratch. This is by far the best lobster bisque you'll ever find, as long as you follow the procedures we're about to go through. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is start with 1 quart of bottled clam juice. Next, we will add 2 quarts of water with 1 tablespoon of kosher salt to the pot. We're going to next bring this to a boil, and in the meantime, we're going to prepare our lobster. Okay, the first thing we're going to do with the lobsters is we're going to actually remove the rubber bands that are on the claws. So be very careful, and the reason we do this is because we don't want a rubber band taste in our stock. So again, very carefully take the bands off. Ouch! Again, very carefully take the bands off.
I saw that.
Hey, mister. Hey, you. Be nice. Alright, so you got 2 claws here. This is the crusher claw. This is the pincher claw. This is the claw that the lobster actually crushes his food with before he eats. Next thing we're going to do is just rinse them off. Make sure they're good and clean. And the next stop is in the pot that contains the boiling clam juice and salted water. Alright, next we take the lobsters, put them in the boiling water, one by one. These are about 1.25 pounds each, and they'll take approximately 12 to 14 minutes on high. Okay, now that the lobsters have, I guess we can call this part steamed, part boiled, we're going to remove them from the pot, even though they can't bite you now anymore. Now the lobsters at this point should not be totally cooked through. We don't want some of the inside of the lobsters to overcook, because we're going to add it to the very end of our dish. It is extremely important. This is the most critical part of making a good bisque. Do not let any of the juices whatsoever escape. Now we're at the point where we're going to take the lobster apart. It has cooled down, so there's really no magic to it, but the important thing is to capture every drop of juice that comes out of this lobster. So we twist the tail, and out comes the tamale. This is the stuff we're going to save for later. This is going to get stirred into the bisque at the end, because if it gets stirred in too early, it'll actually harden up. We'll now take the claws off, and we'll also take the legs off, and I'm going to show you how to extract the meat from the legs to get maximum lobster meat for the bisque. So this is the thorax, and this, as is going to go pretty much into the stock and also into the lobster butter. There's a little more tamale in here we'll get out. And again, we're going to set that aside. Okay, as far as the tail goes, what I usually do is just crack the end of the tail. Again, save this for the stock, and give it a little backwards crack, a little push, and the tail meat should slide right out. Again, we're going to save this for the stock. As far as the claws and knuckles go, we'll remove the knuckles from the claws. And as the claws, you take the back of a heavy-duty knife and you give it a couple of whacks on each side. And there's the juice that we're talking about that we want to save. And then if we were doing this for presentation purposes, you'll see that the whole claw and meat come out in one piece. But we don't have to worry about that because we're doing bisque. So take the meat off, put that aside, and again save all the shells. Plus that juice in the bottom is critical. And then do the same with the other shell, or the other claw. And then the knuckles. Basically crack the knuckles, and then I just go in with a clam knife and just get the meat out as best you can. That's a nice little knuckle there. Looks like there's a little more meat left. And again, save that for the stock, and do the same with this part of the knuckle. Once again, every drip of juice is going down in the pan. Okay, show you a trick with the legs. Most people don't realize you can get meat out of the legs, but I'm going to show you how. So you take the leg, and you put the leg on cutting board like that, and you take a rolling pin. You start at the claw end, and you squeeze it like this, and you can see there's a nice little chunk of lobster meat that came out, and this is for the stock. Okay, well, we just got done shucking all the lobsters. We have the shells here, we have all the meat here, we have the tamale here, and here's all the reserved juices that came out of the shell that is critical. This is like lobster gold right here. So next thing we're going to do is actually start the stock. We're going to melt a stick of salted butter in the pan over medium heat. And then as that's melting, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of paprika. Stir that up until melted and bubbly. We're going to actually brown the butter a little bit, and that's going to add a little more nutty flavor to the bisque. And after this, we're going to put in the lobster shells, and what's going to happen is the oil and fat from the butter will extract the color and the flavor from the shells, and that's going to be the beginning of our stock foundation. So now we're going to add the shells to the butter and paprika mixture. And it's a good idea to try to break up the shells as much as possible so that the maximum surface area of the shells hit the oil. So we got the shells in, we're going to stir it around, get the shells good and coated, and start extracting that color and that flavor from the shells. So we're going to let this go for about 10 minutes to get a good extraction. Put it on low heat at this point. And then next we'll add the rest of our liquid ingredients and let the stock simmer. One other tip is when the shells are in, since there's not a whole lot of butter in there, it'd be good to smash the shells down. Again, it creates more surface area for the shells and the fat to mingle, thereby extracting the flavor and color. Alright, it's been about 5 minutes, and you can see the color in there is very golden. The smell is phenomenal. And at this point now, we're going to add the mirepoix of celery, carrots, and onions. And we're going to let that go for about 15 minutes. I'm going to stir it in. And now the vegetables or mirepoix will start adding additional flavor to our stock base. The next step, now that we let the vegetables and the shell saute for 10 minutes, is to add 1 cup of brandy, 2 cups of dry sherry, and 1.5 teaspoons of tomato paste. At this point, we're going to bring this to a boil for about 10 or 15 minutes. So this is what the stock looks like after about 2 hours of simmering. You'll see the beautiful orange color in it. So the goal now is to strain it and squeeze out the solids to get every drop of juice out that we can. So we'll dump the solids in here. Alright, we got most of the juices in there, and now the solids we're going to take and we're going to smash down and just try to release as much of the juice that's trapped inside there as possible. And then we're going to take this and we're going to put this through a strainer into the large pot. So we're going to strain. As you can see, there's still a lot of juice that remain behind. And we're going to strain this a few times to get down to a pure concentrated liquid. Alright, so we're going to strain again through fine mesh strainer. And you'll see it's catching all the little pieces now. And we're down to almost a pure, luxurious lobster broth. Oh yeah. So when it gets stuck like that, just take your spoon, scrape the bottom. Like that. Let it strain through. Alright, next thing we're going to do is make a roux. This will help thicken up the lobster bisque. We're going to start with a stick of butter in a saute pan. And I don't have a whisk, so I'm using an egg beater. I can't find my whisk. Alright, once it starts sizzling, we'll add 2 tablespoons of minced shallots. Let that cook down until the butter is melted. And then we'll add 14 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Let it cook a little bit to get the flour taste out. But we can't let it cook too long, because the longer you let a roux cook, the darker it gets and the less thickening power it has. Alright, so let's add our flour. Turn the heat down a little bit. Incorporate that flour into the fat and the shallots. As you can see, it's going to be a pretty thick roux. So the flour loosens up, then it should get a little more watery. I'm going to let this cook for about 5, maybe 10 minutes on low. And we'll be back. Alright, next step is to take the stock that was strained, bring the heat back up. As you can see, our roux, the color it is, it's not white, it's kind of a blonde roux. Heat's turned off, it's still bubbling, it's very hot, be very careful with that. So now we're going to add just a pinch of nutmeg, to the stock, and we're going to add 4 cups of heavy cream. And then we're going to bring this back to a slight simmer, add our roux in, stir, check for seasonings and taste, and then chop up the lobster meat and add it in. Alright, so while that's coming up to a simmer, we're going to take the cooked lobster meat that we stored in the fridge and we're going to chop it up into small pieces, or whatever size pieces you want. Notice you got a little bit of the roe here from this lobster. So again, there's no right or wrong, just chop it up. Like going down the middle and kind of making some nice even chops of the tail meat here, because it'll present nicely. And once we have it all chopped up, that comes up to a simmer. We'll thicken our stock, and then we will add our lobster meat, and this should be just about done. Alright, now that we got our liquid up to a simmer, we're going to add in our roux. Add a little bit at a time. Then we're going to whisk to ensure that that there are no lumps, and that it starts to thicken the stock, which I can feel it already. It's definitely starting to thicken the stock. So as you're adding the roux, if you feel the stock is where you want, or the bisque is where you want it, then by all means don't add any more roux. But if you want it a little thicker, just keep adding the roux. So for the most part, I use most of the roux because I like a thick, creamy, and rich lobster bisque. Alright, so we brought it back to a little bit of a simmer. The consistency is there. As you'll see, it coats the back of a spoon just perfectly. And now, the taste test. The moment of truth. Has the all-day lobster bisque been worth it? Let's see. Oh my. Spot on. Oh man. Wow. That should be illegal. So we're going to take the rest of our lobster meat at this point. We're going to put it in. And that'll thicken it up some more, and it'll also add additional flavor. That is just unreal. And I'm going to let it chill down, and we're going to reheat it and actually eat it tomorrow as part of our traditional Christmas dinner. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll have the recipe provided online, and if you want the best lobster bisque you'll ever have, I guarantee, follow these directions. Stay focused on the small points that add a lot of flavor to the final product. Thank you very much. See you again.